to give it away. So it's the best Negan-related haiku as judged by the two of us.
Yep. Those are the rules.
Figure out how to do that. In case I think most people know, but a haiku is it's a simple little poem. It's a 3-line poem. It doesn't need to rhyme at all. Most don't, I would say. But it's got some specific rules. The first line has to be 5 syllables. The second line 7, and then the third line 5. So 5, 7, 5. And just as an example, a couple of examples. There's this great zombie haiku book by Ryan Meekum. Ooh. It's filled with zombie haikus. Here's a few. Blood is really warm. It's like drinking hot chocolate, but with more screaming. Little old ladies speed away in their wheelchairs, frightened meals on wheels. And you are so lucky that I cannot remember how to use doorknobs.
So Morgan's wife.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that, but Negan, it has to be related to Negan somehow. So you can submit up to, but no more than 3, because I know people like to submit a lot, but you can do up to 3 if you want, anywhere from 1 to 3. And how long should we give them to do it?
Good question.
I was thinking
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. That sounds good.
2 weeks sounds good.
So I would say if you can get them in by Saturday the 17th, then we should be good.
And it gives us a chance to exercise our literary appreciation muscles. So good for us.
Yeah, that should be super fun.
Attention shoppers. Deadcast Top 5 in 5, 4, 3, 2.
How many of those haiku are going to have fuckity fuck as a line? I bet at least a few of them.
I hope most of them.
Yeah, most of them. Oh man, we'll read a few of them. Fine. Okay, it's our Deadcast Top 5 this week. It's our top 5 highlights for Walking Dead Season 10, Episode 22. Here's Negan. What'd you think?
I have so many notes. It's like and I'm so excited to talk about this episode. I did enjoy it. And I'm just really psyched to get into it. How about you?
Like super freaking boring. I'm talking boring.
No, that's not true, actually. I just wanted to show off my sound clip. No, I thought it was great. It was intense and touching and revealing, and I love that they give Negan this story arc where it's seeing him go through different modes, so we get to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan show different sides of himself and, his acting chops, because I think he's great. And so good. And I also liked the structure of it I thought it worked really well, just kind of going further and further back in time and even jumping around a little bit. It totally made sense. Sometimes Walking Dead does that and it's a little confusing, but I thought it was really good. But there were some things about it that bothered me, maybe in a way that they're supposed to, but I think maybe not. I don't know. It's interesting. Of course, whenever you get Negan in there, I have some opinions and thoughts about Negan, so...
Well, yeah, I have one anecdote about watching this episode that I thought was really funny, is that I was watching it with Peter, and Lucille came on screen, and I went, oh yeah, that's his wife, like pointing at Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and Peter was like, oh yeah, I know, and I was like, oh cool, he must have seen it. And then in the later scene I turned and I went, I cannot believe that is his actual wife, and Peter was like, yeah, I know, yeah. And then the end of the episode had Angela Kang talking about like what had gone in. It was like a behind the scenes thing, and she said something like, and then when we got Hillary Burton Morgan, and Peter turned in and was like, oh my god, is that his wife? And I'm like, I've literally been telling you this for the whole episode. And he's like, oh, I thought you just meant it was Negan's wife. And I was like, oh my god, why do I even bother?
It's like one of those who's on first kind of things. Literally
that. He was just like, yeah, I know it's his wife. You don't have to keep telling me. Then he's like, oh, that's amazing. And I was
like you'd be pointing at the screen going, that's Daryl's dog. I can't believe that's Daryl's dog.
He's like, it's a good thing you podcast on this because these insights are just, too good for this. And I'm like, sarcastic.
Make a note of that.
Make a note.
Number 5, that was Negan's wife.
That was Negan's wife. Well done. Let's see what's your number 4. There were zombies. Like, it made me laugh a lot. I was like, well, that's one for the show.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone knew that. We've mentioned it a couple times, but that's Hillary Burton, which is Jeffrey Dean Morgan's wife. And so that was really fun to see them on screen together, and you could tell that they had chemistry. And I was curious. I had never watched their show, Friday Night with the Morgans, so, or whatever it is. So I don't think I've seen her in anything else, but I've been curious. So it was cool to get to know her character a little bit, or just see, what she's like, I guess.
Well, it kind of, my number 5 is Hillary Burton Morgan, because I will own up to this. I kind of expected her to be not very good. I was like, well, it's probably convenience casting because of COVID, and she's an actress and like whatever. I thought she was like one of the absolute best things about this episode. I thought Lucille did so much in one episode. I thought her performance was so powerful. I thought she got so much across in the time that she had on screen, and I also thought she was an amazing zombie. I was like, really enjoyed her as a Zed. I was like, whoa. So for me, she was just a real highlight. I really I don't know, there was something just about her performance that was so real and so earnest that I just really dug it. I really bought the chemistry between the two of them. I guess the fact they're actually married probably helps, but just the balance in that relationship and the way that they played it, and the way she kind of dealt with her diagnosis of cancer, and the sort of decision to either confront Negan about him being an absolute jackass or ask for his support in this thing that she was about to go through. And I think she made the right choice. But it was interesting to see that process kind of play out and have her talk about it later. And I really appreciated the time that we had with her, and it gave me a real appreciation for both the actress and the character, I think.
I know. I mean, I kind of wondered when she's saying, you've done better now, and I've stuck with you because I've seen that the man, I could always see the man you are right now, even when you weren't. I wonder if there was any part of her that's like, I'm totally talking to you right now, Jeffrey.
It was actually a documentary.
So real. Yeah.
I liked as well that she had that thing where, although he was driving her absolutely crazy, I loved the scene of him being a total shithead down in the basement playing like friggin', I don't know, Call of Duty or something with some kids, and her coming down just like, who is this man-child? Why did you buy this? What is wrong with you? Yeah. Like, it was nice seeing Negan being kind of taken to task by someone. And I felt that but then when she's speaking to Janine sounds like a bitch too. Neither she nor Negan come off well in this episode. I like that she does still stand by him a little bit, and she's like, that asshole had it coming. Like, she's pissed off at him, but she's also, they're a team, and I appreciate that. Yeah,
and you kind of have to be like, I struggle sometimes with making judgments about people or situations, like even Negan here. I think of Negan as if he were in a court of law, and what would I do? Because I really think when you do some of the things that Negan has done, that there needs to be justice and consequences, no matter how much I like Negan, which I do. I think he's pretty fun to watch and charming sometimes. But if I was in the court of law, I would have to not consider any of that. But when you're in a marriage, you can't can't approach it that way. You got to be a supporter.
And I think this idea of like romance in the apocalypse and love and what it looks like, I don't know, it hit me harder this time, I think, because of what we've all lived through in the last year in terms of stripping our lives back down to the basics and being like, oh, well, the stuff that usually distracts us from our day-to-day lives is kind of gone. Like, we have no choice but to sort of live in our house with our family, with our partner, and deal with just the very basic parts of our lives. And you kind of see that with Negan and Lucille, that actually saved them. Like, stripping away the shit of like money and jobs and whatnot, that actually brought them back together in this really honest way. And there was like the contrast of the two of them laughing about the jacket and eating dog food and hot sauce versus the two of them sitting over this I mean, shout out for Negan's cooking. Like, Negan sounds like he's actually quite a good cook, so that's interesting. Sidebar. We saw him make spaghetti once, but I don't think we've ever heard another reference to that. But like the chicken and the white wine reduction with the oregano and the rosemary didn't make them happy, but being together in that basement with the wigs, just fooling around and being together.
Sequence. Really
it was so lovely. The wig montage, hashtag wig montage, loved it.
Mm-hmm. And I had a friend who had cancer, and she was pretty young, and she wore wigs like that, and I thought it was fabulous. And she actually, it went in remission, so that was cool. But
that's excellent. You've not watched Schitt's Creek, have you?
No, I watched the first episode and thought it was horrible, and I didn't know why the hell I would want to spend any time with these people, but everyone has been so effusive about it that I feel like I need to go back and give it another chance.
Oh, you should stick with it. But wigs are a big character in Schitt's Creek as well, and it made me think of that when I was watching it. I was like, Moira Rose would approve of these wigs. The whole Lucille and Negan, and particularly Hilary Burton Morgan's performance, I just thought was excellent. It did the impossible and really made me feel for Negan in a really earnest way, which I don't think I have done up to now. And we'll talk about it more in comic talk, but I think the show actually did better than the comic here, so I'm interested to chat a bit more about that as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll definitely have a comic talk section, because there's a whole, like I said, hardcover called Here's Negan that we're giving away.
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about that. But I'll go ahead and talk about Lucille a little bit here too. I also thought Hilary Burton was great, and the scene where she finds out she has cancer was very reminiscent of the scene in Breaking Bad where Walter White finds out he has cancer.
I remember that scene. I did watch that season. Yes.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. There's like this humming, and he's barely hearing what the doctor's saying, just kind of retreating into his head. It feels like they kind of swiped it. But it was interesting. I guess so these chemo, I didn't look it up, but I guess you have to take this medicine that's refrigerated and just cycle it through their veins, basically, to kill the cancer. That's what chemo is, right? Chemotherapy. So
chemotherapy is like, and unfortunately, I've learned a lot about this in the last year due to a family member going through it. But chemotherapy is, it can go in a different couple of ways. I've known people who've had like take-home chemo that goes for like 24 hours or something through your system. For others, you go into usually a treatment center or hospital, and you're there for maybe 4 or 5 hours. And they infuse basically the chemicals into your system, and it aggressively kills, hopefully, the cancerous cells, but also it wipes out your immune system to an extent as well. So it's pretty gruesome, and I think it has. What I didn't appreciate is that there are loads of different versions of chemotherapy. So one of the things that I think this episode leaned into that I didn't love but made sense for the story is, I think words like cancer and chemotherapy have really negative connotations, which is true because they are negative things. But I think with chemotherapy, we've kind of been trained to think that, well, when I hear cancer and chemotherapy, I think what we see of Lucille at the very end, which is like bald, skinny, bed, dying, like these kind of words, when actually you can have chemotherapy that's less aggressive, that won't cause you to lose your hair. Like there's, I think traditionally 4 or 5 different drugs go into it. And you can have any kind of mix of drugs depending on what the cancer is. This is a very non-technical, I'm sure we have like medical people listening to this who are like, that is just a gross oversimplification of what chemotherapy is. But yes, I think it would be possible to administer chemotherapy the way that Negan's doing it. And I think the key point is that it does have to be kept cool in order for it to be effective.
Yeah. And my friend who had cancer and went through chemo, she lost her hair, and I think it's common enough. And
it's common enough for sure.
It's a visual thing, so I don't blame them for going that route. And I think that's one thing. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because it seemed like there was a pretty good chance that this chemo, well, I don't really know for sure, but I was sort of assuming that the chemo was extending her life, but that the prognosis was not good. But what Negan said was, we're going to kick this cancer out of you. So he wanted to just keep trying to get more of the chemo medicine in the hopes, I think, that she would go into remission, right? That's what he wanted. And I don't know how unrealistic that was or not. She seemed to realize that, or think anyway, that it wasn't worthwhile. And so it's a really hard situation. I don't blame him for trying. When you get to the point where he turns in these nice people who helped him and possibly might have gotten them killed, it turns out not, but he didn't know that. Just for the possibility of extending his wife's, I mean, this is such a hard thing to talk about, but it's just such a rough situation, you know, like, I'm like, oh, wow, you might have just gotten some people killed and, you know, maybe it
you would do it though.
Yeah. I guess you're right. I mean, I just felt so bad for those people, you know. He may have ended their lives when unnecessarily just to extend his wife's time for another, you know, few months or whatever it would have been, a couple weeks.
But I guess we're not rational when it's the people we love, is it?
I know,
you know, if it's someone that close to you. And also, he kind of, within the arc of the episode, redeems himself a little bit because he does go back.
He does go back, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, poor Franklin.
Yeah. It's not black
Franklin,
and white.
Who we've never seen again. So I assume Franklin
but he seemed
met
like a good guy,
end.
though. I mean, I liked him.
And Laura,
why can't we have Franklin instead of Virgil? That would be nice.
Franklin. I'd love to see him come back.
I know.
Come back, Franklin. Bring back.
Yeah,
Franklin
we
lives.
don't know. I mean, Laura, yeah. Maybe Franklin is, you know, living with the ex-saviors somewhere.
I'm going to hope that, because it was so, I liked seeing Laura again. If you told me that, I was going to feel like, but the actress whose name is, I think, Lindsley Register, I looked her up. I was just like, that's so cool. Hi, Laura. So it was nice to see her again, briefly.
She's really cool. But anyway, so then it's just even more tragic because he gets home and she's already zombified herself and or become a zombie. But I wasn't sure what happened there. Like, she seemed to have tied herself up so she wouldn't endanger anyone. So she knew she was turning. But then the bag over her head made it seem like maybe she killed herself.
I think she did.
Why?
I think she did kill herself. Well, he'd been gone for like 6 weeks at that point, I think. Because I missed it the first time round, but then when I was listening to him tell the kind of bad guys about it, it becomes quite clear. And because he's getting the IV and things like that, it's basically made, I think, clear on a second watching that he's been on the road for 6 weeks. It's taken him longer. He's been sidetracked because the guy that's goading him and sort of beating him up is like, you know, your wife's gonna die, thinking that you walked out on her. And at this point, I mean, 6 weeks on, you might just assume that he did die, you know. Maybe she's getting worse. Maybe she's feeling so unwell that this was the best way out. But yeah, the first viewing, I was like, whoa, that's extreme. And then the second one, I was like, oh, it's been like over a month. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah, it was really tragic. And the only other thing I wanted to mention about her is I read that, I didn't even notice this, but she had a Half Moon shirt on, apparently, which is Beta's country singer stage name.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I guess they
just
were fans.
Love that. Yeah. What did you do in the zombie apocalypse, dear? Oh, I killed our favorite singer. How about you?
You know, I mean, if she had that shirt on, there's a decent chance that she and Negan saw him in concert at some point.
You do wonder, with someone as distinctive as Beta, you're like, did you really not think it might be that dude? But I guess you don't think about that, do you?
I mean, I see the same guy in 2 different movies and I don't even know it's the same guy.
That's what IMDb is for. IMDb and your partner to argue.
If it's post-apocalyptic and he's wearing a zombie skin, you might not make the connection.
You also don't fully. I guess they touch on this in Zombieland, don't they? With Bill Murray, you sort of don't assume that celebrities are around in the apocalypse. Yeah. They do it in The Stand as well. One of the characters in The Stand is like a rock musician from the before times. And yeah, I've always found that quite entertaining because I suppose they must survive, some of them. But it kind of becomes so irrelevant.
I love that Bill Murray plays himself.
Oh, so good.
Okay, what's your number 4?
Number 4. Okay, this is kind of a big one, and I couldn't decide whether or not to talk about it, but what you said earlier really made me think about it. And so it was sort of about where this leaves us with Negan now, because I've been thinking a lot about incarceration and prison and retribution and justice and court of law and how the zombie apocalypse messes with that. And I know we've spoken about this a lot on the show before, and I'm going to try and be articulate about it if I can. Basically, I spent all of this, well, not all of this afternoon, some of this afternoon listening to a podcast called You're Wrong About, which is a great podcast that goes into like urban myths or like commonly cited things that we talk about in society, like I don't know, like urban legends about films,
things
or
that people often get wrong, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. You got that from the title. And today I listened to the one about the Stanford prison experiment, which was quite interesting. And I've also been rereading The Stand. Even though I can't join in Zhead Book Group, I've been rereading The Stand on my own. And The Stand also deals with, you know, post-apocalyptic society. What do you do when it's all been burned to the ground? And one of the things that I got quite interested in when I was in Canada is that there was quite a strong movement for abolition of prisons entirely in the province in which I lived, primarily because the incarceration rates for Indigenous people and Indigenous women in particular were really high. So I've been thinking about abolition, prisons, incarceration, punishment and justice a lot over the last year, and I think Negan is a really, really interesting case study about that kind of morality in terms of like having this blank canvas of what happens after the apocalypse when society's just gone. And I think like the idea with justice generally is that it can be either utilitarian, so like it serves everyone to have this justice performed, you know, it's either like an example of something, or it will serve a greater good for this punishment to happen, or it's retributive, so it's revenge. It's like what Maggie wants, which is to eye for an eye.
What about rehabilitative? Would that be part of the first one?
Well, this is the other thing, is like there are 4 kind of theories of incarceration. Again, guys, I read all of this like in the last week, so please, like, if anyone out there's a law professor, just write in, because I'm explaining this terribly. But yeah, with rehabilitation, that plays really hard into prison theorization and incarceration theory, because there are these ideas of the purpose of prison is justice, the purpose of prison is deterrence, the purpose of prison is reform, or the purpose of prison is safety. And rehabilitation, I think, kind of falls under reform. And I think what The Walking Dead kind of is touching on here is that they know that they want to incarcerate Negan because they don't want to kill him, because killing him would send out the wrong message. But I don't think anyone in The Walking Dead can justify what keeping him locked up is doing. I don't think any of them are on the same page of what the purpose of it is. And that's not a criticism of them, because I don't know that I would know in that situation. And I think the next season is going to probably deal with this a bit, because you've got the voice of retributive justice coming back with Maggie. But then there's this other question, I think, that comes into it. And this was an article I read like in the last month in the very feminist bitch magazine. Sorry guys, I'm getting a bit liberal here. About abolition and about the idea that like there are no good or evil people. There are just people who do things that are good or bad. And there was this quote that I thought was really interesting about what's the word that they use? Accountability. And one of the women who's writing in this particular article, and I want to give her name because I don't want to like not cite this amazing scholar. I think it's Mariam Kaba, who is an abolitionist activist. She talks about accountability as as humans, we think accountability is like an act. So like you take accountability and that's a thing. Like you've done it. You've done the thing that redeems you. So like killing Alpha is accountability. Like Negan has taken accountability. He's done something that rights his wrong. When actually accountability is more like a series of decisions that you continue to make to live in a good way. And I think we're starting to see Negan get frustrated with the fact that it's not an act. It's not something he can just do one thing and everyone's going to forgive him. But we as the audience and as like Team Glenn in all of this, because let's not forget that, you know, Glenn died in a really horrible way because of Negan, and people at Hilltop died because of Negan. How can he ever do accountability in such a way that we're actually going to forgive him? So it just really interests me, because I feel like Negan himself is smarmy and reprehensible and unforgivable in many ways, but he's also in this position where like the system doesn't know what it wants, and we don't know what we like. None of us, I don't think any of us have a satisfactory answer for like what could Negan do to make this better. And I think it's just really interesting to think about that in this situation where there are no prisons. We can't put him into a pre-existing, very flawed system. We can only create our own system, and nobody really knows what to do. And we joked a couple of episodes ago about Carol and Daryl not really knowing what to do without Rick and Michonne. And I think what I'd kind of forgotten was that Rick is a man of the law. Like, he was a policeman before a policeman. He was a police officer. Policeman's very British. He was in the police force before the apocalypse, and Michonne was a lawyer. So they wanted to recreate the systems that came before because they saw that as the way of holding up justice. Whereas I don't know if Carol and Daryl have that commitment to it. I think their morality is a lot more woolly. And I just find it quite interesting. I don't know. These are just my thoughts about like big issues and how Negan kind of fits into them. And I really don't know. Like, what would you do if you were in charge of Alexandria right now? What would you do with him?
Well, I think that, I think that, there needs to be accountability when you do bad things, because they're trying to have safety, a civilization that includes people feeling safe as much as possible. And so if someone can get away with murder, which is what Negan's done, among other things, then people aren't going to feel safe, and they're going to feel emboldened to do whatever they want because there's no consequence. So I think it is a deterrent to have him face some consequences, whatever those are. But I also think that it could be rehabilitative. I know we don't want to talk too much about the comic right now because we have a comic talk section, but I think it is important, one thing, to say that in the comic, it really does seem like Negan has reformed. And he, after all his time in prison, he's only does things to try to prove that they can trust him, and he's helpful, and he kills Alpha and everything. In the show, however, he fucks up again when he gets out and he leads the Whispers to Hilltop and destroys it and gets people killed, as you mentioned. So I think at this point, I would either, if I was in Alexandria, I would want to banish him or kill him. I wouldn't want to. I mean, I guess you could still keep him in prison too. Those would be the three choices. And I don't know, but I would, they have a council to talk these things over. And if I was part of the council, I wouldn't come in with my mind made up. I would want to talk it over and hear what everyone had to say. But I definitely would not be on board at this point with letting Negan stay and just be a part of society. Now, if he'd done what he'd done in the comic, if he'd been in the cell for years and then he'd proven himself in battle, and he'd only, he hadn't turned traitor.
He'd killed Alpha without killing other innocents.
Yeah, without first leading her back and showing her how to destroy a community. Then I would be more open to saying, okay, let's see if he's reformed, let's, I don't know, let him out every weekend or, just little by little and see if we can trust him. So I feel like even now on the show, maybe there is something he could do that would turn me around on him, but it would have to be a hell of a lot at this point after what he did at Hilltop. That just, like I've mentioned a few times, that just killed
because for you, like, Hilltop is almost more bad than Glenn.
It isn't more bad, but it's recent. That's the thing. Like, if I'm going to...
Recent versus non-recent history. Carol talks about this in this episode. Yeah.
She does. And she says, given things in recent history, this is better than you deserve. And I was like, yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally. I'm glad she said that, because that just made a big difference to me, that if the whole thing about Negan is that he's showing that he's redeemed, well, he blew that for me. He's back at square one with me after that. So I feel like at this point, I would just, I love the character. I love watching him, and I'm glad that, they figured out a way to keep him around for the last season and have him be a main character so we can see what happens between him and Maggie and everything. But as a person, if I was in Alexandria or anywhere, I wouldn't want him anywhere near me.
I think it's like, as well, what you're saying, I had a thought and it's just fleeted from my head there, and I don't know my words. No, it's not your fault. You do?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds very British, like the policeman Rick, the Bobby. You can tell I've been living in England for like 2 months. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because Carol, in a way, is like the closest thing to a justice system they have, but even Negan calls it out as being bullshit. He's like, did the committee decide this, or did you decide it, Carol? And she gives him this like amazing psychopath Carol smile of like, here's your rabbit.
It turns out she did. It was all her, because at the end when he comes back, I think he knew that. He kind of knew or figured it out. And she's like, well, I was just trying to, Maggie's going to kill you, and I didn't want that out of my conscience, but now it's not on my conscience. And she says that because she gave him an out and he didn't take it. So now it's on him.
Maggie, that's what I was going to say. Maggie killed Gregory, which I always forget, but Maggie is very much in the kind of exemplary justice, like this is what will happen if you do a certain thing. So it's interesting to see, because I remember at the time Michonne was like, whoa, we're not hanging people, hang on, what the fuck. And it's interesting to kind of have all these different pressures on it. And I think, and I'll make this my overall point, is actually the ending of this episode is really interesting, because I think we've said enough about the comic for people to realize that Negan does have ultimately a redemptive arc in a relatively satisfactory way. This ending, though, with his little shit-eating smug grin at Maggie, that was interesting to me, because he's not going back in there contrite, and he's refusing to bend to the kind of... So a lot of society depends on buy-in. Like, we will all buy into the system that justice is good this way. We will buy into this system that exile is what the right thing is here. And he basically comes back and says, I'm not doing that. And that's that kind of rejection. He's got an agenda. Like, what is he there to do? But that grin at Maggie is not a nice grin. It's not a happy one.
I don't know for sure, but I think that's his armor, to have
swagger.
Yeah, that swagger. But based on what we saw, he's talking to Savior Negan, another hallucinatory character. But, and I think it's a struggle. This whole episode is him struggling with who he is as a person and his identity and what kind of person he is. And that part of himself is saying, we got a lot further with a kind word and good old Lucille here than we ever did with just a kind word.
Just a kind word.
And he said, the sad part is that you thought for even a second that those folks wouldn't see you for anything but who you truly are, which is me. And so he's trying to tell him that this is who you truly are, and you're nothing without this bat and everything. But he goes out and digs up the bat right after that. And then, he thinks about his whole history, but he burns the bat, and he's talking to Lucille, from beyond the grave, that, I'm sorry about everything I did, and now I'm gonna fight for you. And what we saw during the episode was Lucille saying, I saw the man that you could be and not the man that you are right now. I could always see that. So I feel like where he is right now is like, no, I'm going to fight for this version of myself, and I'm going to go back and prove myself. I don't know for sure, but that's what I think that's where he's at with all of this right now.
It's I'm excited to see where it goes, which is unusual, because I kind of thought we're heading into the end bit and nothing's going to really surprise us at this point, but this has piqued my interest, and I just feel that Lauren Cohen and Jeffrey Dean Morgan are going to do a really good job, and I really hope that's the case. Absolutely.
You mentioned Carol. One thing I really loved about that whole thing with Carol taking him out, with a false pretext, and it turns out there's this cabin that's fully stocked with Negan stuff that presumably Daryl helped her get out there. And she says, Is that Leah's cabin? I don't know. I was wondering about that myself too, maybe. But, and she tells him the council voted to banish you. And she's pretty much copying what happened to her, which is that Rick took her out and on a false pretext and told her, he told her the truth. I'm banishing you because if everybody back home found out that you killed Karen and David, then they're not going to trust you anymore. So she's taking a page from Rick's playbook there, but taking on the other role, which I thought was really fascinating.
Oh my goodness, I had forgotten that. That is so right. Rick lives on.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, let's see. I mean, we've talked all around a few different points, but I'll start with my sympathy level for Negan, because we've already touched on it, but I totally believe in having empathy for all people. Like you said, I don't know if I would totally agree there's no evil people, but I think a lot of times that there's potential for good in just about everyone.
Yeah,
you know?
I think I'm with you on that. I don't. Yeah, I think there are some people who are just too, hey, to quote The Walking Dead, too far gone.
Yeah,
like there
psychotic.
are people who are just inherently incapable of goodness, and that's that's worrying.
But Negan is capable of goodness, and he's shown. He saved Judith's life. He killed Alpha. He's helping rebuild Alexandria. So he's not one of those irredeemable psychopaths. But I also believe that action should have consequences, no matter how much you like someone. And what Negan did, I mean, season 7, episode 1 was so big. Like with
Tell me what happened in that one again? Was that no? I'm joking.
It was a blow to the characters of the show, no pun intended, because that the survivors have never forgotten. But it was also a blow to the show itself too. That the show's never recovered from. Like the ratings went way down, but it's fascinating because Jeffrey Dean Morgan is one of the most popular ones at Walker Stalker. I mean, second only to Norman Reedus, I would say, if that. But anyway, so he did that, but also he kept a harem of women, and it seemed like at least some of them felt it was either that or dying. So he's a rapist. He kept people in his group against their will and hunted them down if they tried to leave. And as punishment, when Dwight and Sherry left, he made Sherry part of his harem and ironed Dwight's face. He sent his people out to terrorize others and make them succumb to him and give them half of their stuff or be killed. So he was like a mobster. And it was mentioned a lot how Rick ordered his people to kill the saviors in their sleep. And so what happened with Abraham and Glenn was in retaliation for that. And I think, I always thought that was horrible what Rick did. But it's also like sometimes not remember that the saviors were fucking with our people first. They were attacking them in the street and stuff like that, or, out on the dirt roads. But anyways, then after being in prison for years, he was let out by Carol to kill Alpha, passed up the chance to kill Alpha, and instead helped her attack and destroy Hilltop, resulting in these deaths. Now we find out that he already went through a reckoning and personality change before the zombie apocalypse. He nearly killed a man in a bar for talking too loud. This was a really fascinating story to me because he said that the guy was talking and laughing, and when his wife Lucille asked him to quiet down so she could hear her song, let's just say he chose poorly. So I just thought that was interesting because, I mean, I admire him for not taking shit from a guy who disrespected his wife, but it's kind of dumb to ask someone in a bar to quiet down so you can hear a song. Like bars are full of people talking. Like, can you guys quiet down so I can hear this? Like,
that I could easily listen to at home, but yeah.
And he nearly killed the guy for it. And it was interesting because he's like, he saw what he was capable of there. But he's like, now nobody's suing anybody. So that was sort of a glimpse of what was inside him, possibly, By
the end of the episode, he's just untethered, isn't he? He says it's a question of what I'm capable of, and I'm starting to think that I'm capable of damn near anything. And it is that thing of who you become in the apocalypse, and you don't just click your fingers and become a dictator overnight, do you? Like there's patterns of behavior, and it's almost like Lucille. And I don't like this trope in films. I don't like when a woman is like, the woman kept him good and she kept him right. Like that really annoys me.
But she was like his tether to humanity.
Yes.
To his humanity. Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's the one sort of I guess complaint I would have about how Lucille is used here. She's pretty much just
a saint
there to help explain Negan better, But hey, that's what we wanted. That's okay. If she spent more time on the show, then she would have to exist in and of herself, not just for that purpose, but for one episode. But it is a cliche for a woman to be there just to help explain the man's story. But anyways, so he got fired from his gym teacher job for that assault, and then refused to go back to school to get a better job. And they were low on money, but he spent $600 on this leather jacket. And the worst, he was cheating on his wife and lies about having an appointment with his probation officer, declines to drive her home for a doctor appointment. And then she found out she had cancer, and it's just, horrible. So he already was like, and then as you said, because of her cancer and the zombie apocalypse, it sort of called to his better angels and he became a better person. And this all happened before anything we'd ever seen with him. So he already kind of went through that whole reckoning and then fell again and then sort of was in jail for a long time and then started to seem redeemed and then fell again with Hilltop. So he's just had a long history of maybe he's better now. Oh, no, not so much, you know. And watching Cobra Kai, Daniel LaRusso's daughter, Samantha, last season said, everybody's got a sob story. That doesn't give you the right to be a bully. And as much as I preach about empathy and sympathy, I agree with that too.
No, that's 100% accurate. And I think I was laughing there when you were describing it because sometimes on Twitter or elsewhere on the internet, you see from the Reddit thread, "Am I the asshole?" where someone lists like, so I did this, and this, and now my girlfriend's pissed. Am I the asshole? Just imagining Negan's one and everyone being like, yeah, you're the asshole. He's very much a man-child, I think, as well, isn't he? That kind of they did a good job of aging Jeffrey Dean Morgan down, I think, in this. And you just, even the way he dresses and stuff, you just get the sense like, this fucking guy, man, he's the worst. If your girlfriend was like going out with him, you'd be like, no, no,
leave him alone.
Absolutely not. He's awful.
But I mean, so that when I said something about this episode bothered me, because I think it's fascinating to look at a character like this. It's cool, even though I wouldn't want him to get away with all this stuff. It's really interesting to watch. But what kind of bothers me is that I feel like the show glorifies him. I mean, that movie Natural Born Killers with Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis, I guess, really bothered me because I felt like it glorified violence, and some people say that was the point. It was supposed to be anti-glorification of violence, but I felt like it was glorifying the violence. And I feel like with Negan, you know, we get the origin of his jacket and bat, and I was interested in that, but I'm almost like, wow, he's like a comic book hero in some ways. This is how his origin story, and it just kills me that people, listeners, probably most people who are listening to my voice will forgive all that stuff I just said because they like the character. And fine, it's a TV show, whatever. But when that kind of thing happens in real life, when I see people getting away with really bad things because they have fans, you know, there's one person in particular who's coming to mind right now, but I won't say his name. It just kills me. You know, like, no, there need to be consequences for like serious shit like this.
So, yeah, I agree. And it's funny, one of the things that always used to make me a bit uneasy, not uneasy, but just interesting cons was the women that would queue up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, for Negan.
I remember in San Francisco, a woman raised her hand and I forget exactly what she said, but she basically just offered to sleep with him in front of everybody. Yeah.
And it's hard because the impression I get is that Jeffrey Dean Morgan himself is a really nice guy. Like I've never had the impression that he's like
too. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a good guy,
he's an actor, isn't he?
Like I remember the first time I did a panel with him, he was a little nervous backstage, but he was also trying to psych himself out. And we're like, "You're ready?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'll tear up any stage I go out onto." So he just kind of had that bravado to him.
I mean, actors in it.
But I also like, he's a magnetic guy, so it's fine if women are attracted to him. Who wouldn't be? But I do think there's this thing about just the fact that he plays such a bad guy, unapologetically bad guy. Like the ones who are kind of slimy about it, like Nicholas, everyone just hates them. But if you're unapologetic about it, that can be really attractive. And that's why, like, freaking Ted Bundy got marriage proposals while he was in prison, you know?
Freaking Ted Bundy got married in court. Like,
right.
Yeah. It's nuts.
It's like that. The bad boy, the attractiveness of the bad boy.
Because it's funny, because it wasn't one of my points, but one of my notes was like, where does this episode leave us with Negan in terms of how we feel about him? Because, yeah, we've learned all this, and it was a lovely little kind of film about his life, and they went in hard, I think, on making us empathize with him. But there's still, like you say, there's that mountain of shit between then and now. And does it change anything? I don't think it does
part
really
of
change
the
anything.
point was to have he had a chance to reflect on his past and he made a decision. And I think that decision was, no, I'm not going to let them banish me. I'm going to go and improve myself. We'll see if I'm right. But I think that was the point. Now there is the question of, well, he also had 8 years or whatever it was in prison to think about that too. Why did he just decide it now? Maybe because he got banished, so he was like, no, wait, how did I get to a point where they won't even let me be in their town or something?
It's a lot to think about. Yeah, is this enough to make me understand Negan? I don't know. It still seems, we kind of see the birth of him at the end of the episode with the fire and him kicking the door down and coming out with the baseball bat. But there's even still a leap between that and what we see season 7, episode 1 with his harem of wives, people in a lineup, cult of personality. It's interesting to me. I'm like, I think you raise a good point that there has to be a seed of it beforehand. Like the potential was, there was always this edge to him. And I think they did a good job in this episode of kind of highlighting that in a subtle way.
Yeah. And even when I loved when she caught him playing games and he was like, yeah, I hope you have your shitting pants on, which is the same thing you said, in the lineup. And I'm like, that is the kind of language you would have with kids and playing online games. But then he said something like, come on, don't be a pussy. This is just going to make you better. And that attitude is what he had with all the saviors. He thought he was doing tough love, that people were too weak in the apocalypse and he was strengthening them up. So there was a seed of that before too.
You wonder how Laura she was with him the longest, I guess. I kind of want to find out Laura's story now. This whole episode, I was like,
she's fascinating because she's a character who was always on the sides, never really focused on that much. But now we know she gave Negan his bat and somehow ended up in his group of saviors. I presume he didn't admit to her that he's the reason they got attacked because he sold. And
she was introduced as scary lady.
Yeah, she was very brutal. But even here, I mean, he comes in with his gun saying, I've put your hands up or whatever, and to get the medicine. And she comes up behind him and clocks him. And Franklin's like, you didn't have to do that. And she's like, better safe than sorry. So part of me was like, wow, she was already kind of brutal back then. But then I'm like, no, I mean, a guy comes in pointing a gun, you're going to want to knock him out. So that seemed totally justified. But anyway, she already had at least the capability to, take action like that. And then, we saw her really brutal. But then after a time jump, we saw her as part of the council in Alexandria. I'm like, whoa, we didn't get to see how that happened either. And then I looked it up because I forgot, but she was killed by
Beta.
Michael Myers Beta. Yeah.
Oh, I'd forgotten that too. I'm glad it wasn't just me because I felt so guilty. But he just throws her against the wall and she breaks her neck. It's really harsh.
Yeah.
I kind of, Charlie Adler, I assume you listen to every podcast we do. If you and Kirkman could do a Laura spin-off comic, that would really be great. Thanks.
Or just have another episode next season on it.
Yeah, it'd be good. I'd love to know.
Okay, where are we? What number?
I think it's my number 3, and my number 3 won't take too long because it really was just, I thought Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance was really good in this episode. He did a really good job of believably situating himself in all the different Negans, because how do you unravel a character? How do you go back to Apocalypse Zero? This guy's now scared of killing walkers. This guy doesn't want to go outside. So I thought he did that really well.
It was really fun to see him do Savior Negan again. And he really
that was great.
Got it right back. And it kind of reminds me of, for Better Call Saul fans, you see it's a prequel. So he starts out not at all like the Saul Goodman we know from Breaking Bad. And then as the seasons go by, he's becoming more and more that character. So it's kind of fun to see different permutations of the same character and how the actors can just recall it back again.
And even going that little bit further back and seeing pre-Negan as well was great. And they did a really good job. I think I said this earlier, of subtly aging him down. I think basically they dyed his beard and maybe his hair is longer. I'm not sure, but it worked.
He looked warmer,
I was like
less threatening.
Yeah, they kind of made him meek, and he dressed. Yeah, he dressed in his little sweatpants, couldn't even kill a zombie. Meanwhile, Lucille comes out looking like some kind of steampunk badass, just like, yeah.
And I think that might be the first zombie we've ever seen get stabbed with a knife and it didn't go through its head like butter.
I liked that detail. I was like, early zombies, harder heads. Thank you. Consistent logic within the show.
Yeah. And it was cool. Like it's also good, like you're saying, to recall different versions of a character, but also earlier on in the zombie apocalypse, when you're not used to the idea that people who used to be your neighbor are now these crazy monsters, and so it's not so easy to just kill somebody. You know, you think still kind of think of them as maybe a person underneath there, or used to be a person. Now, 12 years in, it's just like a pest.
And it also ties into what you're saying about Negan being kind of hinged to society, but having that potential to become unhinged, because he says he's worried that he's going to get used to it, and it's almost like he's holding on to that bit of himself where he's like,
he sees the possibility that he could go nuts with it.
Yeah, where she's like, it's more practical to just kill them. I want to watch my James Bond movie. I mean, full like disclosure, I recently read Pride and Prejudice, which is what Negan is reading to Lucille in that scene. I was very proud of myself for being able to recognize that. It's not great. I don't blame Negan for not being that interested in reading the rest of it. I was like, it's very overrated. Sorry, Jane Austen fans. I don't know that we have that many Jane Austen fans that tune into this on the reg, but just in case, I apologize.
I think Karen and I covered Pride and Prejudice and Zombies at some point years ago.
I do want to watch that, to be fair, now that I've actually read the book. But I thought the killer for me was the monologue to the fire. I thought that was one of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's best performances. I really liked that.
I was a little bit like, explication, but I guess if you're sort of coming to terms, because he was talking about how, you know, he's still ashamed, and that he basically explaining that what he did with the saviors was to try and cover up his shame, but that's all he has left, or something like that. It was a great performance. You're right.
Oh, it was a good, and the best line was, "I love the shit out of you," because it's just so Negan, isn't it? It's just like, I mean, not in a like, oh my god, I love him, he's so cute, woo, but like just that, you know, he's a bit crass, and that's him probably being the most earnest and loving that he'll ever be, and he's still saying, "I love the shit out of you," which is not what every person wants to hear. But you know,
I bet Lucille loved it.
Oh yeah, and I think for me, just Jeffrey Dean Morgan knocked it out of the park. I thought it was great. They both gave really excellent performances, but that monologue and the burning of the bat got me emotional, and I really didn't think that was possible at this point, but there you are. Yeah,
no, it did me too, which, as much as I say I wouldn't want to be around him, I feel for him, for sure.
So that was my number 3, JDM.
Okay, mine was Negan's self-concept and what his plan is going forward, and I think we've pretty much covered that. So what's your number 2?
Let's talk about Carol for my number 2. I liked the Carol we got in this episode. It was very Carol, almost in like Littlefinger / Varys mode, to go back to Game of Thrones, like sort of making things happen and putting out the spider webs and kind of seeing what lands. And I liked that she sort of renounced Negan at the end and was kind of like, well, not my problem. I tried.
She's like,
see you later, asshole.
See you later, asshole. Yeah. I just love that. She's like, well, I tried to help you and you didn't. And I'm honestly, Carol and Negan, I think there's chemistry there. Like, I don't think they're going to go there, but the two of them are just, they have such a funny little dynamic that I'm like, I could almost picture Carol like sleeping with him and being like, nah, bye, and then like breaking his heart.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, freaking Melissa McBride can have chemistry with pretty much anyone she wants, I feel like.
She'd like chemistry with the rabbit that she handed him. She's like, this is your rabbit. I was like, oh, happy Easter, everyone. Like, there's Easter bunnies in the world. And her kind of sweet but dangerous smile always, I just love it. Just that kind of like, okay, your funeral, literally. And I like that Negan has the measure of her and is sort of like, so was this a council thing or a you thing? And she's like,
he wasn't
I'm not
fooled.
answering that. But I felt a bit like at the start where he's like, maybe you could put in a word for me with Maggie. I'm like, what's she going to say? Like,
that was kind of dumb.
Yeah, I know he beat Glenn to death, but like I saw him like plant some tomatoes last year and he was so good with Judith. Like, yeah, I was like, Negan, come on now, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So yeah, I liked the little bit of Carol that we got there, and that we kind of resolved the debt between Carol and Negan. Like, because I was worried it was going to be a bit like, I don't know, she's going to feel that she owes him, or he's going to feel that she. And I just like the way that Carol like drew a line under it and was like, well, no, I'm done. You did the thing I wanted you to do, so fuck off now.
What's
bye.
she gonna say? I know that he killed your husband with a bat, but he also destroyed your former little village there.
But he makes the best chicken and white wine reduction. Have you tried it? It's insane.
Awesome.
I would watch a spin-off where Carol and Negan open a restaurant. Just saying.
Okay, my number 2 was all about Lucille, but we've already gone through that. Number 1.
My number 1 then is breadcrumbs / Easter eggs / are the writers listening to our podcast. So in Are the Writers Listening to Our Podcast, last week I asked for a Negan monologue, and this week we got a Negan monologue. We got many Negan monologues, and he read from a classic English text. So Angela Kang, please stop stealing my ideas.
I'm sure they just whipped that up within the last week.
Yeah, they were like, Jeffrey, come in. We have to reshoot. Jason and Lucy had opinions. And they're like, oh, no. I'm pretty sure that a listener at some point has said cult of personality without a cult, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Such a great
and that
phrase.
You're a clown.
Maybe
He said you're a clown.
I was like, they've been listening to our critiques. Amazing. And the final one was the hard skull zombie, because I was like, oh, we always complain that their heads are too soft. Thanks for addressing that concern for us. The other thing that got me was when she was listening to the radio and she switches it to like the music, and the person on the radio is saying something like the flesh of the people they kill, and literally when she changed it I was like, they're dead, they're all messed up. Right. I was like, it sounds like our Sting.
I loved hearing that, because we don't get to see a lot of just those first days, and you could see that she was like, we all can be with the news sometimes, like, oh god, I don't want to hear that, but it's like, it's kind of important. You're missing out on
but
some
also
stuff.
that the idea, I think, as well, that cancer or a diagnosis like that narrows your vision. You're like, oh my god, I've just found out that I've got cancer. And it's like, a bomb could fall and you're like, this is less relevant than what's happened to me right now. But it sounded a hell of a lot like our clip.
They said, I loved hearing it. It said, some blah, blah, blah have concluded that in all cases the killers are eating the flesh of the people they kill.
The people.
And now for a Walking Dead cast news update.
That would make my day if one day they turned on the radio and it's just our podcast of us just talking shit.
Who are these two?
Who are these two?